for talking to us before, and we're now on part 2 of the talk about. So we talked about ghosting God previously, and now we're talking about spiritual laziness and addressing a bit more about the darker aspect of people's, I guess, personalities or. Yeah. So could you introduce the topic a bit, please, Father?
Yeah. I guess, spiritual laziness means basically that we're not praying. Okay, so we're not, if I can compare it, say, at home. If you're part of a family and you're part of a household, for example, and you've been assigned with chores, okay? There's the cleaning, there's the washing of the dishes, there's the laundry, there's the vacuuming, there's so many things in the house, the gardening, that needs to be done. And for whatever reason, you stop. You're too lazy, you don't want to do. Or if we compare it to study, and I think maybe this is more relevant to study, you've got, you're doing 4 subjects, full-time load, and you've got, over the semester, say 8 essays to do and 4 exams, and you know that you have all this work to do. You know that you have so much to do so that you can do well in your life, so you can do well in the course. However, you start procrastinating, you start, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later, I don't want to do it, I can't be bothered, blah, 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 blah. I think what we need to analyze is the source of the laziness rather than the actual laziness itself. Always, I think it's the source. What's causing me to be lazy? What's causing me to be dark?
Yeah.
What's taking me to this place? Is it because I'm not interested in what I'm doing, for example? Am I not interested in praying?
Yeah.
Am I not interested in God? Doesn't God attract me, or doesn't God bring me to Him? Is that the reason? Am I frightened? Am I frightened to go there? Am I frightened to speak to God? Am I frightened to... am I occupied with many other things in my life that I don't want to give God any time? So everything else is consuming me in my life, my social life, my love life, my work life, my university life, etc., my family life, that I don't have that time for God. I don't want to give that time to God, so I become spiritual. And I think that's a very important one, because in our lives these days we have so much on. There's so much taking place in our lives that we put God on the priority. On our priorities, he's way down. Okay, so I think that forms a part of our spiritual laziness, because we just don't have time, or we're too tired. For example, I've come home after a long day at uni, or I've gone to uni, I've gone to work, been out with my friends, get home, say midnight, you're dead, you're tired.
You don't bother.
You don't want to pray.
Yeah.
You're not bothered anymore praying. So I think that's where the discipline has to come in.
Yeah.
And in the same way that you have to discipline your study life, the same way that you have to discipline your work life, you have to discipline your prayer life as well. So there has to be some form of discipline in your prayer life. That doesn't mean that I have to pray this prayer, for example, that I'm forced to pray this prayer. There are many people that don't like to pray particular prayers.
Yeah.
Okay? A lot of people don't like to pray novenas. They prefer to pray the rosary, for example. Some people prefer to pray the office, the Maronite office, for example. Some people prefer to come to Mass on a daily basis and pray. That's what fulfills them, and that's what gives them their strength. We just have to find a form of praying that's interesting, and I say interesting because you have to connect. If I'm not connecting with God, then how am I praying? Because if we're going to use the technology terminology, if I can, or the Z age terminology, if the bar in my connectivity with God is not high, then that's going to cause me spiritual laziness. So if the bar is only on 1, so how many bars on the
3 or 4? 3 or 4, yeah.
So if it's just 1, then the reception is very low, the connectivity is very low, and then there's a fear and there's a danger of going into SOS mode
when you have no reception at all.
And then after SOS? There's no service.
Emergency only or something.
Yeah. So SOS is emergency only, and that's what we were talking about in the previous talk about resorting to God only when I need Him. So that's the no service mode, because I only go to Him when I'm when it's an emergency.
Yeah.
But the biggest danger is going to no service.
No connection.
No
at all.
connection whatsoever, and that's where the spiritual laziness is at its lowest, because I'm not connecting with God whatsoever. And that's why we need to find a form of praying or a way of praying that we can connect, because prayer, what's prayer? It's about communication. It's communicating with God.
Isn't that like sorry to interrupt you, but to draw on the analogy we used in the last part about it actually being a relationship with God, and that's something that it's a very thorough. You can call it a metaphor, but it's quite literal in a lot of senses, because if, let's say you have a love language, you've heard of those, like the 5. I guess you can say like the different devotions you can have to God are different types of love languages, and everyone has a preference. I have one of my friends, they will have 6 novenas running concurrently, and I'll ask them to pray a rosary and they just don't want to do it.
100%.
Some people don't like group prayer, some people prefer group prayer. And in a lot of senses, with like any good relationship, you want to devote time to them always, and you want to share that life with them in a sense. So I guess that metaphor goes really deep in that
100%.
sense. Yeah.
So it's about that connectivity, and it's about that relationship. And if you're yearning for Jesus, so when you've got a good relationship with Jesus, like we were talking about your girlfriend, for example, or someone that you love very much. When I love that person so much, I want to be with them.
Yeah.
I want to sit with them. I want to spend my time with them. I want to speak to them. They're the person. That's the person that I go to in my high and in my low, in every part of my life.
Yeah.
So that's our relationship with Jesus. We have to yearn for Him. We have to want to be with Him.
Yeah.
We have to miss Him. So if I'm at work, for example, if I'm all day at work and I don't have time to pray, do I miss Jesus? Do I miss coming to Mass now in this pandemic that we're living in now?
Yeah.
Do we miss coming to Mass? Do we miss coming to church? I mean, and I would say from the reaction and from my conversation with many people now are yearning. They're yearning to be with Jesus, not because they can't be with Jesus, for example, in prayer at home, but they're yearning for the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, in the sacrament. And that's that yearning, that's that love that we have for Him that has to be activated through our prayer life. And when that love is not activated, so again, we'll go back to the analogy of the bars, when that bar is very low, when there's low connectivity, when there's SOS or no service, then that love is not activated whatsoever.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that bar is always fully connected. So it might mean that you have to go with Telstra or someone like that, but
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
And in concerning, like, I know for me at least, I know it's really easy to get lazy spiritually if you kind of get swept up with I know it's kind of weird to say, like, the pleasures of the world. Like, let's say I'd rather watch a YouTube video instead of praying before I go to sleep, or I guess because it's that form of instant gratification that comes in this age of it, and I think social media is a big culprit in this. People are so used to instant gratification, and I think that's something that is in a lot of ways kind of counterintuitive in a spiritual sense, because a lot of spirituality is based on belief and faith that things are going to, if they're not good now, they will improve later on. So I think kind of getting yourself out of that mind frame that society so easily falls in now, which makes us lazy in a sense. But could you tie that into that darker aspect of people's personalities? How does that relate, and what is this darker aspect about that we all have within our personalities?
Yeah. Look, I think if we can speak about it from an isolation point of view, social media isolates us from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
It brings the whole world to us, so through the gadget, through the phone, or through whatever, but it really takes us away from the world, because all we want to do is be by ourselves. We want to watch the movie by ourselves. We want to whatever it is that we're doing on the phone or on the, it's by ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, we're in our own little world, if you like. So even as a family, for example, sometimes and we fall into this. Even my family, the other night, for example, we were all sitting in the lounge room, in the living room, and we all had our phones in our hands, and everyone was either on Facebook, on Instagram. I was doing some research for a homily, for example, on my phone. My wife was looking at Facebook, for example, if I can say. My son was on something else, except my daughter was on, doing her home. So it takes us away from the world, and it puts us in our own, as I said, it brings the whole world to us, but it takes us out of the world as well. So I think that's the danger, and that's where the darkness lies. That isolation, that being taken out of the world. So the darkness is being taken away from Jesus. So today's gospel is a very beautiful gospel. Share it with me, but it talks about.
I have it. It's from John, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do have it actually. Anyway, just continue.
It's about the light.
Do you want me to go
No,
for
it's
you?
fine.
I have it on my.
It's about how we have to follow the light,
Yeah.
and the light is only with us for a short period of time, and then if we don't follow the light, we go into the darkness. Okay, so it's a bit,
I'll get it on my phone.
very no, it's fine. It's about exactly what we're speaking about
Yeah,
today.
it is. Yeah.
Okay, so we have to always, when we're not with Jesus, we're in the darkness.
Yeah.
And to be with Jesus doesn't mean that we have to be praying 24/7. Okay, but to be with Jesus means that our whole day is a prayer. So whatever I'm doing, I'm offering up for if I'm with my family, how am I dealing with them? Am I loving them?
Yeah.
If I'm a mother or a father and I'm cooking a meal for my children, for example, am I cooking that children with love, or am I cooking that children because it's a chore that I have to do and I have to do that chore and it's something that I need to do it? When I'm at work, when I'm studying, am I doing what I'm doing because of my love for what I'm doing, or am I doing it just for the sake of doing it? Okay, so it's about how. It's about how we do it, and that's why we go back to the cause, the root cause of everything.
Yeah.
Why am I lazy? Because there's no love. Because God or the light has been taken out of my life. I've taken the light out of my life, and I've gone into that realm of darkness.
So in a sense, you're saying that, well, God never distances himself from us. It's always like, so the relationship is two ways, in the sense that it takes two to tango. You need to both come forward to have that relationship, but to break it, it only takes one person to break it, and it's always us. God's perfect, so he's always going to be there within like a perfect capacity. So I think that I guess oftentimes we can really easily think, oh God, you've to use the word, forsaken me, in a sense, but God never forsakes us. It's always us that goes away from him, and that we just have to be patient.
We put him to the side.
Yeah.
But if based on that, a lot of people get into that trap of spiritual laziness because they are disappointed with God.
Yeah.
They are upset with God. They blame God for something or rather. So there's been some sort of disappointment in their life, maybe some sort of tragedy, some sort of illness. They've come to God, and for whatever reason, what they wished or what they requested or what they wanted from God was not fulfilled. So immediately their reaction is to put God to the side. He didn't complete what he didn't do what I wanted him to do. What's the point of praying? Why should I pray this novena? Why should I pray this and why should I pray that? When he's not listening, he's not answering my prayer. Again, we have to make sure that it's not, he knows everything, and he knows what we need and how we need it. We have to trust. We have to trust in his timing to begin with, because maybe, just maybe, that, granting you that wish or granting you that desire, granting you that petition, wasn't going to do you any good at that particular time, but in the future it could. So we have to always rely on his timing.
That's
It's like,
Mm.
if I can say, with a vocation. When I was discerning for the priesthood, I would always be, up in arms. Why aren't you answering my prayers? Why am I not a priest? I became a subdeacon, and it took me, say, a year and a half to become a deacon, and I was just always anxious, always anxious. My spiritual director said, calm down, relax. It's not about you. It's not what you want. It's what God wants. God is calling you. God is leading you, and it's when it's His timing that will be glorified in you. It's His timing that will allow you to achieve what you want to achieve, not what you want. Maybe what you want is not the right thing. So we always have to, we get back to that trusting in God and relying on His providence and His timing.
So in a sense, you're saying that like spiritual laziness can come about because we become impatient with God's will, and that we want it to be in our time, not God's time. And I think you touched a bit about blaming God and being angry at Him for not doing things in a timely manner according to our timeline. And that's really good, because the third topic that we want to talk about in this video series is blaming God. So yeah, well, thank you for talking to us about spiritual laziness. We'll wrap that there, and we'll talk about blaming God in the next part. Thank you, Father.